Welcome to Business Chat with Debbie, where we talk big stories with small business. I'm your host, Debbie Wolberton, and my guest today is Tony Pilling from Inspiring On Recruitment. So we've known each other for a little while now.
Yeah.
And I've come on board with you, helping you out with your company, because I believe that your company is a really ethical company in what is a really hard hit industry, which is social care. Because we all know the issues the NHS has suffered during COVID. People, basically influx of people into the hospitals. And as a result, the social care industry is just taking an absolute whammy of a hit. There's a lot of hospitals all up and down the country who can't get rid of patients. They're bed blocking because there's no care packages to get those people out of beds back to their own homes. There's just nobody there who can look after them when they get home because the staff have just fallen to the wayside. Yeah. And I know you've worked in social care for a long, long time. You've seen what the issues are, you've seen what is needed, and obviously out of that has come Inspiring On Recruitment.
Exactly.
So tell me about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started Inspiring On just before COVID. So, I knew there were problems in health and social care before that. Really wanted to address the problems. And we just kind of spiraled, even further, deeper with problems due to COVID, really. So it's just been a really, really tough journey. The first 12 months of the company, we weren't really trading at all.
Yeah.
It was very hard to find clients. Obviously the government at that time had put restrictions in place for the movement of staff between care homes. So we really kind of started probably at the worst possible time ever. And I kind of at that point remember sort of sitting there thinking, the problem that I thought I could help to fix. I'm not going to say that I could fix everything, but this is, I need to rethink everything. Things have just gone into a lot deeper depths, really. So obviously I focused on Cornwall because Cornwall was the place that was struggling the most. I had the right ideas and the right sort of game plan to actually create that positive change that I really wanted to do. And basically moved to Cornwall and set about sort of trying to create that positive change, really. The positive change that we're trying to create is all to do with being ethical. So, I could quite easily go out today and ramp my prices up to some of the, up with some of the highest prices in Cornwall. Some agencies are charging near £25 an hour. For a care staff member, it's just not feasible. That to me is pressuring care homes so much that we are going to end up with care homes closing, and the problem's going to get even worse.
Yeah.
So you've got to, I've walked into not thinking about money. I've walked into thinking about trying to solve a problem. There's a big difference between, having a business to generate as much cash as you can and having a business to try and generate, enough revenue to actually be a sustainable business, but also solve an issue. And that's kind of where we are. So, the same goes with wages. We pay good wages. So our wages start at £11 an hour. I could, like some other people are, put the wages up higher and higher and higher, but then you've got to put the bills up higher and higher and higher to the client. So at this point, you're not actually solving a problem. You're again creating
more problems, especially with the cost of living the way it is. And these care homes are going to have huge energy bills. Do you know what I mean? They're going to start, well, they've started now. So looking at paying for huge energy bills, more on food, and then more on staff is just going to break them.
Well, I think, unfortunately, the likelihood that we've actually got now is that, a lot of care homes are going to close. Not only can they not staff them, but they can't afford to pay the bills for agency. When we got out the other side of COVID, I mean, care homes were already struggling for staff anyway.
Yeah.
When we came out the back of COVID, people started to leave the care homes because ultimately it's a skilled job that was not being paid relative to the skill set that these people do. You know, like I've previously said to you, you know, there aren't many jobs that, you know, you can work with somebody for a few years in a care home, they die, you know, the next minute you're preparing their body for the undertaker to bring them out, and then 5 minutes later you're in next door speaking to somebody else.
Another person.
And you know, your shift is 12 hours. Well, not in all care homes, but you know, you've got to make it through to the end of your shift. You know, and you're expected in the next day.
You've lost a friend. You've lost somebody who you've cared for a long time.
Yeah. There are no jobs in the world like that.
No.
And I think for far too long, carers have been undervalued, you know, and it's such a crying shame, because, you know, they are real special people, you know, they absolutely are. They're caring, you know, and I just don't feel that, you know, up until now that the whole system has been right for them, you know. The system has been built around business rather than around people.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I'm trying to do now, is build my business around the people rather than around a business, you know. And ultimately, you know, I don't have to hound and chase as much money as possible. I just need to get it right for the people that work for me. And, you know, if I get it right, you know, money will come naturally anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, as you said, carers are special people. The care industry sees so many people come on board and they only last a couple of weeks and then they're out the door because they can't cope with. It's not just physical, it's mental as well. A lot of it is mental. Do you know what I mean? My husband's a carer. He works at Trelisk, do you know what I mean? And he sees it every day. Do you know what I mean? Some of the horror stories that he comes home with, especially working during COVID, especially like you did. It takes a toll mentally as well as physically. And they don't get compensated. They don't get enough recognition for what they do. It's a really hard job.
No, I mean, I was reading an article the other day, and, you know, it's from NHS England, and they were saying that I think it's 550,000 carers short at the minute. That's been an increase of 55% in the past 12 months. It's not slowing down. You know, so we're kind of like heading, you know, 100 miles an hour towards a brick wall at the minute, and there's nothing in place. So from what I could gather from the article, they were saying there should be a price cap on agencies, which I completely agree with.
I do agree totally.
Yeah, being an agency myself, you know, I completely agree. I also believe agencies should be regulated. They're not
regulated?
They're not regulated, no.
That's horrendous.
Yeah, so you're looking after...
They're sending people in to look after other people, and it's not a regulated industry.
Regulated. So, you know, not only is it not regulated, but, you know, obviously there are certain things that clients expect training-wise, you know, which they need to adhere to, but there's no real... sort of say punishment that, you know, because you're not regulated, nobody is going to close you down if you haven't done something like that. Yes, with a DBS, etc., but when it comes to things like that, you know, the training potentially in some, I'm not going to say all agencies because that'd be the wrong thing to say, you know, because there are some fantastic agencies out there and their training is phenomenal, you know, but, you know,
it's still not a regulated industry.
It's not regulated, which is really, really frustrating, you know. You know, it should be an industry that should be regulated by, I mean, it'd be very hard because obviously agencies can supply to, you know, Ofsted provisions or CQC provisions. So you've basically got two regulatory bodies that your client has to adhere to. But as the agency itself, there's not a regulatory body, you know. So, you know, there's so many things that really do need to change to help the industry actually recover. And I think that's one of them. You know, a prime example is, which I find is so frustrating, I think when the government announced all of the funding, the extra funding, all of that funding went to the NHS. Now, to me, the problem, yes, there are problems in the NHS, but the problems lie in the health and social care sector, you know, and if you're going to pour money at the top, it's never going to get down to the bottom. No. So, you know, if the bottom falls out, then the NHS fails too, hence is where we are now. So the NHS were paying £100 for each carer for an attendance allowance for each shift. That to me is ridiculous. You know, paying a carer £100 to turn up to shift and then paying them for their shift. You know, that money could have been used far, far better to support the care homes and to support the infrastructure.
Out of the hospital.
Yeah.
into this,
rather than paying a healthcare assistant £100 to turn up at shift. We lost a few carers at the time. I spoke to them about it, and I said to them, I don't blame you. If somebody was offering me £100 to turn up to shift and pay me on top, I'd do it. But all it did was just, again, disrupted and shuffled the system.
Yeah.
It didn't actually, I think, solve a problem. All of that money could have quite easily, but have been far better used opening up training centres, getting people into care, training them, rather than just plugging a hole, just moving over. Because this payment ended in September. So, since September, now the hospitals will lose their healthcare assistants again. They'll just move back again.
Yeah.
So you haven't really solved much of a problem.
No.
Considering Treliske is still backed up with ambulances. Waiting hours still can be up to 20 hour plus. People are dying. It's not really changed much.
No.
And this is a problem. I think there needs to be a real hard think about what we need to do to solve the problem, instead of just throwing some money at it and in the wrong places.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know my husband works at Treliske. I said I think it's going to take somebody to go in from the top and work their way all the way down and actually see what everybody does and what jobs they're doing, where money's getting spent, and saying, well, actually, we don't actually need this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This money could be spent elsewhere rather than on a job that is not needed.
I think another quite scary thing for Cornwall, unfortunately, another scary thing, is with all of the houses that are being built, we've got one hospital. And, there's no plans to build another hospital in Cornwall, as far as I'm aware. There's no plans to invest in the local hospitals to upskill and to, expand on the facilities they can offer. When we're building thousands and thousands more houses in Cornwall and we can't cope now,
no.
I
think Treliske has got about approximately 550 beds.
This tiny.
How many people live in Cornwall and they've got 550 beds?
I know.
And quite a lot of them are bed blocked by people who need to go home to their own homes and have people coming in and looking after them at home. And obviously there's nobody to do it.
No, it's really worrying. I don't quite know how this has all been planned out, but it's scary.
It is scary.
Very scary. Because we will all need some kind of care at some point in our life. It's the one skilled job you cannot replace it with anything else. You can't replace care. The human interaction, human touch, human love. You can't replace that with anything else.
No. Well, do you know, my husband was ill just before we went on holiday, and he got taken into Treliske, an ambulance, and he was sitting in an ambulance for 26 hours outside before they actually got him a bed in A&E. And you're like, really? We're in 2022 and there's people sitting in ambulances outside hospitals? Why?
And it's so crazy because obviously, I'm so passionate about what I'm trying to achieve.
I know, you're very passionate about what you do. That's why I'm behind you 100%, because you are very passionate about what you do.
But everybody I speak to has a similar horrific story. Absolutely everybody. But the profile has not been risen. Do you know what I mean? People still, they're not shouting about it. Hence the reason that I want to start raising the profile of it. I want to keep this in the public eye, because if it's lost in it, many lives will be lost. Many illnesses will be incurable, past the point of being cured because of diagnosis. There's so many things that are happening that if we don't continue to highlight the problem will get worse. We're already gone past the tipping point. There's no denying that.
No.
We've now got to figure out how we slow it down and how we get back to some normality in some way.
Yeah, and giving people the care they deserve. Because that's all it's all about, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's having those people in place to give people the care that they need at home and they deserve.
It's frustrating, when you think, my parents, prime examples, they've, worked all their lives, paid their taxes, worked really hard. Now if anything was to happen to them, after, paying all of these taxes, they would lose their house, and they would have to pay all of that back, and and I worry about the younger generation seeing this happen and thinking, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We've got to start thinking about, how that's foreseen for the generation coming up. you know, as to why would we bother doing all of
Why
that?
would we work really hard? Why would we
give
buy our own
everything
property? To the chance are that at some point I'm going to have to sell that to pay for my care.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, the care at the minute, you know, I don't want to say it's inadequate, you know, but it's basic care, you know, because there aren't the people there to deliver all of the, the additional things in care that you would like, you would hope, you would expect, you know. It needs to be a massive rethink.
Yeah.
Massive rethink.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming in today.
Okay.
It's been an absolute pleasure. You've got a really important story that needs to get out there, and people need to think about it. So if you want a job in and care, looking after people, if you've got that mentality, you've got that gumption in you, then have a look at Tony's website, Aspiring on Recruitment. He's always looking for staff. He's got a really good rate of pay, and the ethics behind the company are 100% for the staff. So have a look at his website and give him a call if that's something that you're interested in doing. And that's all for me for today. And I will see you next time on the next podcast. Bye bye.